Great. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to kick off Ali Talks Tech episode 1 of 2025. And with me today, I have the pleasure of introducing my good friend from Nigeria, Tope Alabi. Tope is the CEO and founder of a FinTech called Afriex. I hope I pronounced that correctly. If not, Tope, you can correct me. Tope. So the way I usually like to have these conversations is it's a free flow. It's about Tope, about what you built, about the company, the FinTech that you built, and what you are solving for. So introduction to my audience, Tope. Who is Tope? Why are we here today? What's Afriex? Over to you, my brother.
Ali, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you. My name is Tope Alabi. I'm founder, CEO of Afriex. I'm a Nigerian kid, born in Nigeria, grew up in the States, as you can tell by my accent. A FinTech co-founder, and someone is just trying their best to be useful. And so, thanks for having me.
You're welcome, Tope. So, what's the origin story for Afriex?
That's a great question. I always tell people, I always kind of dreamed of building something that could impact a lot of lives, especially the lives of people that I grew up with, or my people per se. And so I kind of had that, I would say, playing in the back of my mind throughout my life. As a kid, I studied electrical engineering, came out of school, I went to work in Silicon Valley, and then worked as an engineer at many companies. It was around, I would say,
A sample of those companies that you worked with, and what's in your experience there?
Sure. I worked at Wix.com, which is like a drag and drop website builder. I worked at IDEO, which is like a design consulting firm. They do a lot of
IDEO. Yes.
IDEO. Yes. I worked at Consensus, which is a blockchain consulting firm as well. I'll say those are three experiences that kind of shaped my career.
Okay.
Of course, in between all of those, I was also experimenting with side projects and always tinkering. But Consensus was the last experience before I kind of jumped out and launched Afriex back in 2019, 2020.
Okay.
And so at that time, I'm at Consensus. Consensus is a blockchain company, and I was looking around and I felt like I could see an opportunity for how this can be used for cross-border payments back home. So my co-founder and I were kind of tinkering on different projects at that time. Before we launched Afriex, we played around with like many different ideas. Just really out of curiosity. Both engineers, we built games, we built chatbots, we built, you name it. We were just kind of two curious guys building stuff. John, my co-founder at the time, was living in Nigeria. I was living in San Francisco. And sometimes I would fly to Nigeria and we would be working together on something. And I would always have to...
That would be Lagos, of course.
Lagos, Nigeria. And I would always have to send myself money from my US bank account. And at that time, it was so slow and so expensive that we figured that we could do it ourselves since we're already building all this other cool stuff. And so that was really the start.
To build this, just back up a little bit right there. What do you mean send yourself money? Were you not able to carry cards?
No. I mean, you can carry cards, but cards are also expensive, right? So if you go to ATM, the ATM, there's the ATM fee from like the ATM's bank, and then your card bank will also charge you an additional fee. And then there's also the foreign exchange rate, which the banks get all determined. Like using the ATM is an expensive way.
So you're in Nigeria, you log on to your bank account in the US and send yourself money in Nigeria.
I would use other platforms like, Western Union or whatever was available. I would use ATMs like you just mentioned. I was using all these different means. And, to be honest, what really was annoying was the time, the speed, because I might be in a tight situation and I needed money very,
Correct.
and that just wasn't happening at that time. And so being engineers, we figured that we could solve this ourselves. Yeah. And so that's how we started. That's how we started. Two naive kids that thought FinTech was simple and easy, and it was just a simple engineering problem, obviously. And so we
So
we
that's
start.
2019.
That's 2019, late 2019. I want to say like October, December 2019. Start building the app. Uh, m- the app is built. It's in the stores. Only our family members are willing to use it at this point. Um,
March 2020.
March 2020. Yeah.
Then COVID
And
hit.
yeah, COVID is hitting, and you know, something funny happened when COVID hit. The uh, the foreign exchange rate for most African countries really split off from the official exchange rate at that time. And so what that did was create a real gap in the FX market, or like a real
Mm.
difference. FX revenue became a lot larger than usual.
So the
So
spreads are just
the spreads are
went
quite.
crazy.
So to give you context, or your listeners context, for most cross-border companies, Western Union, pretty much everyone that does this kind of business, there's two ways that you make money. There's the FX spread,
Correct.
and there's transaction fee. So
And free.
let's say I'm $100, maybe the company charges me $1, and then on the back end, they're making some money between whatever they're able to source the currency for and whatever they're like charging you for. So the rate might be different from what you see on Google or something like that. And so when the pandemic hit, a lot of economies got hit hard. Uh, you know, and the real exchange rates on the ground got really far from what the official exchange rates were, and the central banks were trying to like maintain some semblance of like keeping things stable, and so there was a really huge arbitrage there. And so
I think we can agree they lost a bit of control.
yeah, it was a tough time. I mean, the reality is governments are still recovering from COVID. That was a very significant event, not just in economics, but just like in the history of man and medicine. So that
There.
we're all still kind of recovering from that. Um, and so that was an opportunity that we saw at that time, building this product. Like, oh wow, this is a interesting thing. Uh, and so we were one of the early companies that were able to sort of provide really affordable remittances, right?
Yeah.
We could give people FX rates that they were not getting on other platforms. And so just us being able to catch that and that faith to really get the wind behind our back and the sort of early stage capital to get going. Shortly after that, we got into YC. That helped a lot as well, put us around a lot of smart people, gave us a little bit of a network. And, I guess the rest is history. But that was the
So
very start.
so let's step back a bit and mm, talk to me about your experience getting into YC. So that's Y Combinator for my audiences who may not have had that term before. Take me through that process and your experience.
YC is one of the best startup accelerators in the world, probably the best startup accelerator in the world. Um, my experience getting into YC, I would say I applied around 3 times actually.
You applied three
For
times.
3 times with different companies. Right now with this very same company, I applied years ago, like many years ago, with like funny enough, a AI machine learning company. I'm around 2014, 2015. Didn't get in with that one, but was able to build some relationships with some of the partners. And then as I build Afriex, we applied twice with Afriex, like in back to back, within 6 months or something, and we got in the second time. Um, a lot of people I know want to ask me how to get in and this and that. It's really, frankly, my biggest tip around that is just like clear communication. The more simple you can make,
Your pitch,
yes,
your
it needs,
application.
needs to be clear, because a lot of times I'll speak to founders and they have every buzzword. I'm asked, what do you do? And they like AI plus blockchain plus bio, they're doing everything, it seems like, and it's not really clear what they do. I find that
So the key is the principle, best. Keep it simple.
exactly, young companies try to make it sound complicated. Big companies try to make it sound simple. And so just make it simple.
Okay. All right. So you got into YC.
Yep.
Out of YC, what for you and your founder was the most important thing coming out of YC? What were the learnings? What were the takeouts?
Takeaways. The biggest benefit of YC is just the other founders, right? You are now in a room with some of the other smartest people you've ever met. They're doing the same thing. They're highly motivated. It kind of puts a battery in your back, right? You feel extremely motivated to grow your business very, very quickly. And everyone else around you is doing the same thing. So there's a little bit of a competition there as well. Um, so that was the biggest benefit. Of course, being able to fundraise, right? YC gives you a network
Yeah.
to meet investors, and that was a really great start for our fundraising journey. So I was those are really the two biggest takeaways. I still have friends from that time. I still keep in touch with people from that time, and those people, because they're also running businesses, are often able to, you know, share advice and share ideas and kind of brainstorm together on how to do
So how old
Afriex.
is Afriex today?
Afriex today is a little over 4 years, I would say, depending on like when you call it. Did it start at incorporation? Did it start when the app went live? But something a little bit over 4 years.
So your main focus as Afriex is remittance, cross-border payments.
Today, it's remittance is the core business today.
Okay. And what are the corridors that you're covering?
We started with US to Nigeria,
US to Nigeria?
US to Nigeria, US to Ghana, UK. So let me say it this way: we collect in US, UK, all of Europe, and Nigeria. We pay out
All of Europe.
yes, pretty much any country that spends the euro currency.
Okay, within the Euro zone.
Exactly.
But UK also, because UK is not in the Euro zone.
Exactly. Right.
All right.
And then we pay out to about 10 African countries: Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Uganda, Cameroon, Ivory Coast, Egypt, and the list goes on.
So, Tope, what's your greatest challenge today as a FinTech remittance company? What's your greatest challenge?
The greatest challenge is ongoing. It's regulation. Dealing with governments.
I wish you had told me something.
I think it is,
I mean, this is just such a common conversation with fintechs.
No, I mean, historically, I try to tell people fintech is a wide field, right? You can run a B2C fintech, you can run a B2B fintech.
Yeah.
You just deal with governments. For consumer fintechs, the biggest challenge you will likely face are three things: customer service, fraud, and regulation.
Yeah.
Regulation is common to all fintechs. Customer service is common to all consumer companies. And then fraud is also very common in banking and finance. So those are the three things that you're going to face, and
Okay.
you can manage those three. You should be.
So, how many licenses do you have today, and how long will that take you? I mean, as a CEO, as a founder CEO, how much time are you spending on compliance and regulatory issues?
It's ongoing. The two people that I will always answer the phone for, that's my head of compliance and my lawyer. So those two people call, it's gonna be about two rings and an answer. Um, how much time am I spending? Whatever it takes. We have a head of compliance who is
Mhm.
handling the day-to-day stuff, reporting, applications, transaction monitoring. There's a lot that goes into it, obviously.
Mhm.
But generally, I'm there to sign the checks and have the conversations with the stakeholders.
Okay.
Today we are directly licensed. Two, three, four. I want to say four direct licenses, and then we also partner with local financial institutions in all the places
Yes.
that.
Okay. So I must say that's clever because you don't have to be if you know your game, you don't have to be licensed directly. You can partner with other financial service institutions.
But there's almost no company that's actually directly licensed in all the places. It's
That's correct. That's
extremely,
correct.
extremely rare and hard to do.
So in the US, how many licenses do you have in the US? There's this perception that um, the US is one country when it comes to financial services licensing, and then shock on us that you actually need to have a license in as many states that they are in the US. So how many of those licenses do you have?
So we have actually two state licenses.
Two state
Right.
licenses.
Two state licenses, and then basically bank partnerships to cover all the rest. The gotcha with the
Okay.
licenses is that you still need a bank. That's it's harder to find a bank than to get a license, because a license is pretty straightforward application and
Yeah.
a fee and
Yes.
boarding. It's kind of
Mhm.
clear cut, and for many of the states, it's a revenue line, so they will give you the license as long as
Mm.
play
You
by the rules.
comply with what is required.
But the banks are a different story. Every bank has its own priorities. Many of the banks that bank fintechs are smaller community banks, and so they also can only handle so much volume based on their license as well. And so the banking, I would say, is actually more complicated than the license.
Okay, interesting. In your journey to date, how much money has Afriex raised, and how important is that in relation to actually growing your business in terms of actual funding within through revenues? How are you how are you sort of mixing these two? Because I think a clear and present conversation today is in Africa is that all this funding that is coming into Africa, um, how much of that is local funding? How much of that is foreign funding? And how many of these companies do we still own?
Right. So to answer the question, we've raised about 11.5 million over the
Okay.
over the few years of the company. Um, and fundraising is a tool in your tool
Mm.
belt, right? As a founder, you have some mission and vision that you're trying to accomplish. Um, there are different strategies and ways to go around that, and
Yeah.
fundraising from external investors is a tool to accomplish that vision. Um, And that's how I view it. There are also many different ways to raise money, right? You can raise equity, you can raise money from debt.
That. Mhm.
You may be able to get grants depending on how you're positioned. And so it's a tool. It's a tool in your tool belt. Now to the question of like how many of these companies do we own? I think it's a natural progression that as companies grow, they become more and more like institutions.
Yeah.
Their ownership becomes spread out across more and more stakeholders. And if your company were to last a really long time, you as the founder may no longer be there, right? And so I don't think it's necessarily something to be afraid of. I do think, obviously you want to maintain as much control as you can for as long as you can, um, just to see the vision to the end, and hopefully hand it over to the right folks when the time comes. Um, but it's each company has its own strategy, and each founder has their own strategy on how to work with that.
Okay. Great. So, um, let's talk about your vision for Africa.
Mm. What is the vision, right?
Yes.
um, our vision is to make it easy for people to uh, create wealth, no matter where they live. All
Okay.
right, being someone that grew up in a third world country and found my way to the States and got this, wonderful chance of life. I want to
Mhm.
give that to other people. And one way of doing that, at least the way I'm doing that today, is by connecting those economies to each other, making it faster and easier for people to transact, receive their salaries, or send money, or invest in a business, or in whatever the case is. So that's our vision. Everyone that works at Afriex wants to make a global impact. They want to leave a lasting impact on people, especially people in emerging markets. And right now, remittances is the way that we're doing that. As we continue to grow, we will find other ways of doing that. Generally in the financial space, obviously, but uh, uh, yeah, we will. That's ultimately what we're trying to do.
So, currently your core is really remittances, moving money from point A to point B. Do you
Yes,
see
that's what
that? Do you see that expanding to other financial services products?
Yeah, I believe so. I think all financial services at scale become banks or some type of bank.
Hmm.
So as we scale, as we add more products, we take a greater share of our customers' financial lives, and we start to look more and more like a bank. And so I think that's what this company looks like at scale. The company's still a baby, only 4 years old. Maybe at 10 years old or 15 years old, it might look a lot different than it does today. But yes, definitely cross-border payments is our core. Today, we allow people to send money uh, from one place to another. We offer multi-currency bank accounts. So if you
Yeah.
live in, Kenya, or if you live in Cameroon, you can open a
Mhm.
USD bank account. This is
Mhm.
primarily for businesses and remote workers to receive their
Okay.
salaries.
Okay.
And behind there, we're working on other new products like cards and many more to come. So
So, as a
again,
Kenyan today, can I open a Afriex account?
yeah, 100%. You can open an Afriex account. Primarily, most people that live in Kenya use our product to receive their salary. So we can get you a USD bank account as a Kenyan uh, to basically receive payments from overseas.
Cool. It's interesting. In Africa, you have tier one markets, financial services, fintechs. Then you have tier two markets and tier three markets. So, I mean, tier one markets when it comes to fintechs in Africa, with tier one markets when it comes to fintechs, Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, and Egypt. Those are the tier one markets. Even if you follow the money in fundraising, you'll see the money mostly 90% of the fundraising goes to these markets. The latest numbers from Africa Big Deal on funds raised by startups across Africa, 2024, full year 2024, South Africa, $368, I think, million dollars. Egypt, 400 million US dollars. Nigeria, 410 million US dollars, and Kenya, 630 million plus US dollars in total. As a fintech founder, what's your comment about that skewed way, the way funds are raised across Africa? 4 countries taking up literally, the bulk of funds raised. What's your comments on that? What are your thoughts? Why? Why is that the case, and what is the impact to the other?
Yeah. Just to comment, I mean, within Africa, those are probably the tiers, but I think on a global scale, the whole continent still has some ways to go. I'm very excited to be, part of the energy that's kind of growing us. So just wanted to put that out there. As far as like the why certain places receive more funding than others, I think this is a common thing. San Francisco, even in the U.S., right, which is like where most of venture capital is spent, one city gets the city of San Francisco would get way more venture funding than the city of Atlanta, right? So
Yeah,
it's a tech startups tend to be a very networked industry where you have a network of founders, engineers, VCs that introduce each other to new opportunities, and so there's a very network um, aspect to
but
the.
all boys system.
I wouldn't necessarily say it's an old boy system. I just think it's an expertise system, right? The people that know how to do these things are around each other, right? So it's not a old boy system in the sense of like, oh, only my cousin or my brother is going to like get into this. It's just like, oh, you're a founder and you're in my vicinity. I can impart some of that to you. And it's easier for me to do that if you're physically in the same place as me. So I think it's just a natural uh effect of like human networks. People in the same place, just like, Washington, DC is a government town. San Francisco, if you want to go to Hollywood, you have to go to Los Angeles. And so that's just how I think certain industries work.
Okay. Interesting perspective. So my next question or comment is sort of tongue in cheek. But you're one of the few Nigerian founders who I know, who I talk to, who seem to have moved back to Lagos and not operating their startup in London or San Francisco or Miami or Silicon Valley. What's up with that? What's made you decide, you know what, I'm coming back home full time?
That was a great question. I get that question. You'd be surprised how many times I get. Um, and I guess I'm doing like the reverse immigration, kind of thing. Well, I mean, for me, I'd already experienced both. I was born in Nigeria as a kid and then went to school and started my career in the US. So I didn't feel I may not have this like illusion of the US that some other people may have, or illusion of the UK. For me, it's kind of just another place, right? Um, I can run this company from, Brazil. It really, quite frankly, doesn't matter, especially in the age of the internet where I can like talk to people and work online. So for me, coming back to Nigeria and coming back to Africa really gave me a chance to get closer to
Mhm.
our customers, get closer to our partners. I mean, we send money, like I mentioned, we're sending money from the US to Nigeria. I wanted to be in Nigeria to meet the banks that are actually paying out these funds to be able to
Correct.
really make sure that we're integrated very, very tightly to see new opportunities coming along. I think founders who are able to spend time in markets will ultimately build the best products. And so that was the main motivation, honestly, for me initially coming. It also Nigeria is in a very interesting location to where uh, it's almost at the center of the world in a way. Like, if you look at the
That's
equator
right.
and right meridian. So my travel from Nigeria, I can more easily go to Ghana, right? I can more easily go to Egypt and more easily go to South Africa instead of coming all the way from San Francisco every time. I can be in market and
And you
meet
can still go to San Francisco and it's not,
I still go to San
really
Francisco.
Pacific.
And so for me, it's been great. I mean, look, I don't know where I'll live every single year for the rest of my life, but I think for us, especially being a cross-border company, this has been uh, a great decision for us.
Great. Interesting. Tope, as African founder in Africa and in FinTech, what would be your advice to entrepreneurs starting out, especially in FinTech now?
Uh, Go where the ball is going, not where it is. Right.
Expand on
Again,
that.
when we first started, there have been different waves. There's been like the lending wave, there's the payment processing wave, there's now the border wave. So right now everyone is doing cross border. Everyone is totally
Yes,
inspired.
that's right.
But what you have to recognize is that there are already incumbents in that space that have already spent years understanding the space. So you're gonna have to compete with them. We were lucky enough to start this business when the timing was very interesting for like FX revenues. And so I think timing is a big key that many early founders don't consider,
Okay.
right? Um, Try to pick something that is not fully done yet, still kind of early, but has enough there where you can build and work with other partners and things like that. So that would be my advice. Just try to pick an elevator that's going up. There's a book called this guy named Frank Slootman that a lot. Pick an elevator that's going up, not one already at the top. For example, and
Yeah.
just work hard.
Right. Right. Um, we're almost coming to the tail end of our conversation, and I still got so much to ask and talk about. I know we talked about the regulatory environment, we touched on it, but let's zero in across Africa. Let's talk about how you're navigating the complex landscape of fintechs across Africa. I mean, you are in multiple, you said 10 or 12 African countries where you are doing.
We always had to move.
How are you navigating that? And what will be the advice? You know, I must tell you that at least once or twice a week, I get a LinkedIn message from to be founders in fintech. And each and every one of them has this new revolutionary idea to disrupt financial services. And it is my duty as somebody in the space to like tone down their enthusiasm a bit, not kill their spirit. I try very much not to kill their spirit, but to tone down and ask them very pointed, specific questions about what they have thought about when it comes to the policy and regulatory framework. And almost to a man or a woman, or actually, we haven't thought about that. I said, look, the fact of the matter is that most of us in fintech today seem to have forgotten the fin in the in fintech and focus just on the tech. And the fact of the matter is, Topi, that Financial services is one of the most regulated industries anywhere in the world. Africa is no exception. So it'd be great to give some nuggets of wisdom to, to be fintech founders, because there will continue to be many of them coming.
My first advice for, and maybe this, I'm sure many of them will not take this advice, is you should probably not start a fintech company. There's so many, we've kind of figured out every way there is to move money. Um, and so, there's saving apps, there's remittance apps, there's POS, that, a lot of these things kind of already exist.
Big techs,
I
payment,
would, I would recommend,
blockchain.
exactly. There's so many of us that I would recommend, thinking more widely, think about other software products that you can make. Definitely it's easier than ever to build a fintech, to build at least, not necessarily to run. Fintech is easy to build, but hard to run, right? And so
Right.
I think people should consider that. Now, as far as regulatory, how do you manage the regulators across Africa? African regulators, I would say, are a little bit different than diaspora regulators, from what I've seen.
Expound
It's
on that.
very relationship based, very relationship based. Um, you know, which is good. We can be a good and a bad thing, right? Like you actually want to be even closer to the African regulator than maybe you need to be for those in Europe or in North America or whatever the case might be. Also, that relationship might also allow you more grace, right? In working with them as well. So that would be my advice, right? Travel around, go see them, have somebody there that can talk to them. Sometimes they might even fly to your country to come see you. Like it's definitely a relationship. Um, and so that would be my advice.
So, on the back of that, what do you see the future of African fintech?
The future of African fintech. Well, mobile money is growing tremendously across pretty much all countries. I'm very, very optimistic about that. I think the speed, instant payments to me is the biggest story that not a lot of people are telling right now. Because I think that's what will allow the opportunity for these economies to really integrate with each other.
Correct.
Um, the future of African fintech. I think the future is just more access, cross-border payments, getting access to all the tools, cards, debit, asset management, really having the option to do whatever it is that you need to do from a financial perspective that's already available in other markets. What we're doing is kind of like we know what to build because we've seen it globally, and now it's our work to do the regulatory work and the distribution work to make sure it reaches all the people as quickly as possible. Now, on top of that, we need other industries to build, right? E-commerce, logistics, software services. We're kind of building that foundation on which many of the other industries will benefit and will be able to build their businesses. And so, that's what I see.
Great. Lastly, to be any personal insights that you would want to share? Your journey from software engineering to fintech, your leadership philosophy, your approach to building a fintech company. How do you balance growth with social impact? Stuff like that.
Mm. Personal insight I would want to share. I would definitely recommend prioritizing impact.
Okay.
Um, because you just want to make sure that your time spent on earth is like as useful as possible. Right? This life is short. Being an entrepreneur is a lot of hard work. Um, you don't even get that much time to like really smell the roses per se. So you want to make sure that in that moment when you do pick your head up, you're happy and satisfied with what you're doing. regardless of the results. Some of us are going to be IPO billionaires. Some of us will not be IPO, like in any field, right? But you just want to be sure that what you are doing is something that you'll be proud of
It's impactful.
when you're 80, 90, or whenever that time comes. You are proud of what you did. And if that doesn't mean you need to solve world hunger. Whatever it is, as long as you're happy and proud of that, then that should work. So that would be my primary advice. Besides that, learn as much as you can. Just keep learning. Keep focus on learning. Whatever you're working on is likely a deeper subject than it looks like initially.
ABL, I say. Always be learning.
Yeah, yeah. There's no end to how deep you can go on a particular subject, and so just keep going.
Right, right. So thank you so much for your time. It's been an insightful conversation. I look forward to more engagements with you going forward. Ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of our first episode of 2025, Ali Talks Tech. We are all about telling the Pan-African tech story. I want to thank my guest for today for giving us his time, Tope Alabi. Asante sana, as we say in Kiswahili. Thank you very, very much. I'm looking forward to engaging with you going forward.